Excellent. Thank you so much. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and I now recognize Mr. Ezell for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate the importance of this hearing. And it's clear we must ensure the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has the tools necessary to combat this forced labor. We have discussed how the Chinese Communist Party is sending the Uyghur population into slave labor, undermining industries across the world. This subjection of the Uyghurs has been clearly declared genocide by both the Trump and the Biden administration. Today I want to start by focusing on the slave labor practice by the CCP that manipulates the markets in the seafood industry. Reports have shown the CCP has been using the slave labor practices on fishing vessels and at seafood processing plants. These forced labor practices have allowed the CCP to flood the global market with foreign-raised shrimp. This places a massive financial burden on American shrimpers, including those in South Mississippi where I live. Mr. Stumo, I believe one way the U.S. can create a fair market for our domestic producers is to stop importing goods that are produced through forced slave labor. Since I think we can all agree on that, can you describe how the CCP uses loopholes to get our laws that should stop products that are involved with this slave labor?
Yes, sir. How the shrimp gets into the U.S. is a good example of the challenges the government faces in responding to the Uyghur forced labor. Wild-caught Argentine shrimp could be, shipped to a factory in Shandong province for processing by Uyghur forced labor before being sent here. There is a problem with manifest transparency. Bills of ladings for open ocean freight are public. As was said, truck and rail is not, air is not. This committee or the Congress should be making all manifests public, and should require further supply chain and transparency. Shift the burden to prove you have the right to enter our country because you are compliant with our laws. Shift it to the importer. That would be important. And also, I would say that with regard to Mr. Ivey's questions and yours, even before the UFLPA, we had 19 USC 1307, which is the original law preventing forced labor goods from coming in, and the Customs has used it at times. And in 2018, we had a WRO, withhold release order, against one entity in China for forced labor goods. But then they did another one for all of Turkmenistan, a countrywide WRO. And what should happen, and unfortunately the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act didn't go countrywide with China, it went region-wide, which is very difficult to find out what region in China for customs. You do a full countrywide and then you provide exemptions. So if you have what should happen is if we've got cotton and cotton products, countrywide restriction, and then let them demonstrate that they are compliant. But you only get in if you're compliant. The whack-a-mole of entity by entity, laudable, but it's much more labor intensive.
Thank you. How did practices such as the state-run labor transfer programs used by the Chinese make enforcement more difficult here in the U.S.?
Well, of course, Uyghur forced labor is beyond Xinjiang. It's all over the country. It's state, as opposed to other forced labor findings by the Department of Labor, which find this company or this sector. It's clearly comes from Beijing. It's a state program in Beijing. It's state-sponsored genocide rather than sort of somebody in the country doing it. And so China doesn't let people do business due diligence. They don't let people come into the country to inspect. It's a black box, and if you try to pierce that black box, you'll be prosecuted or disappeared. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a presumption that it can't come in once you find that this sector is a problem, and then they have to prove, any importer has to prove that it can.
Well, I'll tell you, I have been in contact with, I'm just about out of time, with so many of the shrimpers on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that are just, I mean, they're going out of business. And it's a tragedy because, you know, we got such wonderful seafood down there on the coast, and it's just really hurting our hometown shrimpers. So, you know, we need to, as the Congress, and as much as information as we can get, to put a stop to some of this. So, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.